just remember, you heard this here first. Because I started picking up on some things a while back. And I was saying, wait a minute. This is kind of odd. But things have been moving in this kind of direction for a long time. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the Indo-Pacific. The Indo-Pacific, in case you haven't noticed, is starting to blossom and bloom as a region. I'm not just talking about one country in general. I'm talking about the region. Everybody now is acknowledging it. You have major world powers saying so. The United States, China, Russia. They're saying the Indo-Pacific has something going on. And we want to know just what it is. And cut us in on the deal. You know, that's the way I look at that. And it's because of really solid, across the board, regional leadership. You know, whether you're talking about Vietnam and all the things that Vietnam has been through to now be where it is now. Or Thailand. The Philippines are starting to pull themselves out of something. But it really went bad. But they're starting to, slowly, perhaps. You never know. And then you have the cream of the crop. The country, I think, is really the emerald jewel of the Pacific. The emerald jewel of the Indo-Pacific. New Zealand. I mean, you're talking about a turnaround story of epic proportion in New Zealand, and done in large part through civility and kindness. You know, it's novel that something like that can even exist on this planet. But it does. And I owe it in large part in modern times to its effective decisions it's made from the citizenry and choosing their leaders. I can think of no other leader, really, none, who is more effective and thoughtful in terms of how she deals with her citizenry, how she speaks and shares and cares for her citizenry, than Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern of New Zealand. She's at the tippy top. I would say she's one of the best, if not the best world leaders we've ever had. Very thoughtful and deliberative. Very. Now, she's on visit to our country. She's going to meet with the president this Tuesday in the White House. And you know, when you meet with an ally, sometimes people our citizenry, we tend to think of ally and non-ally in combative ways. Because sometimes we tend to think when we meet with someone who's friendly to our country, that they don't have any disagreements, substantial, impactful, and meaningful disagreements. They do. Think of it like this. You have friends. You get into arguments with your friends too. You have enemies. They're your enemies because you always get into arguments. And you can't stand to be around each other. So you're enemies. So your friends, you still have disagreements with your friends. Suppose your friend is, well, not a vegan. And you are. And you want to go to an establishment that's vegan for you. And they don't. That's a disagreement, an argument. You're still friends at the end of the day. You hug and kiss and make it up. So what I'm saying is this. Just because New Zealand and America are on good terms doesn't mean that they agree on every philosophical and policy decision. They most certainly don't. Now, you heard this from me first. Others will follow and start to say it after you hear it from me. But this is true. There's a great big search in the Indo-Pacific for the most elegant black women in America to move to New Zealand. There's a search going on. And you know, you gotta consider presidents, prime ministers, dignitaries from other countries as top talent recruiters as well. Now they don't go off and say, hey, I want you and you and you and you to come to my country by September of this year. No, they don't do that kind of shit. They act as ambassadors for their nation. And through being in another person's country, and their citizenry seeing you, seeing how you dress, seeing how you interact with the press, through all those things, that citizenry gains a perception of how your nation operates. So, it's tough to recruit people in mass from a country like America to move to a country that they don't know anything about. That's a tough job. But I don't think it's going to be as tough as you think. Because I've heard through a number of sources that the elegant black woman is really wanting to move to the Indo-Pacific. Now, you say it's not going to be a mass. We're talking about people like maybe, well, I won't name any names, but hypothetically speaking, if high-profile people said, you know what, I'm moving to New Zealand, what do you think happens when the ordinary people hear this? They're like, oh, New Zealand. I've never heard anything about it. What happens there? That's what the ordinary person does. And that's where tourism comes in. Because the moment you travel to a place, and you see it. You experience something. You're hooked if you have a good experience. Now, if you have a bad experience, you can't wait to leave. New Zealand is an excellent experience. It's thrilling. It's something that you must partake in at least once in your life. The coffee shops. They have some of the finest coffee in the world in New Zealand. Their cafes are top notch. If you love riding bicycles, you can bike your whole entire life away. It's something to behold that when an elegant person experiences it, they're like transfixed. They don't want to go back. And you know, that's going to happen. Wellington, Auckland, they're open and they're ready and waiting. And you know, you gotta think, when you have a choice, it's also about what keeps someone and what makes someone want to leave. And that goes down to conditions too. What's the conditions in America? Heightened racism, heightened bigotry and hate crimes, rampant domestic violence. So when you're thinking of elegance, you're thinking of luxury and relaxation. Something that you can enjoy and not have to stress about. Cause worry. Now, you say, it's not that racially diverse, is what the argument or critique would be of New Zealand. Well, technically, it's about the same as the United States. Give or take a little bit. But in terms of other things like governance, religion, and culture, much more understanding, not so judgmental. I think that's really the key. The feeling you get of no judgment. That's the key. Because in this country, you're conditioned to always be in judgment mode. Judging this over that, that over this. And there's no judging. As much as some people would say that on paper it looks the same as America, it's a complete and utter culture shock. And they speak English too. The Indo-Pacific has got it going on, as they would say. You know, I said that I was myself leaving America. But I didn't give a time for it as to when. And I don't like doing time frames. I really don't. I don't think it's necessary to do time frames, even more so when you're of elegance. I really don't. I think time frames only serve a point of stress, because then you're like, if I don't meet my original deadline, I'm a complete and utter failure. And then you give up on the idea of wanting to do it. So, when most people do it, they explore and they tour. The number one way people choose to go and live somewhere elsewhere than where they were originally born is by visiting first. You want tourism. You want to tour and survey. When you buy a new home, you want to tour the home. See what it looks like. Look at the bedrooms, the bathrooms, the shower, the cabinets. You want to see shit. You don't buy unseen. And you wouldn't go and live somewhere unseen. So it makes sense, the touring aspect. Just remember I told you. I give it within a decade. You're going to start hearing stories. The elegant black woman is choosing the Indo-Pacific. Why wouldn't you? I'll give you an example. Say 2,000 highly technical black women who work in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. 2,000 black women decide they want to live in New Zealand and move to New Zealand. Do you know how much economic growth New Zealand would experience? It would be an explosion. Now say 10,000 black women, just in all different professions, with all different types of skills, move to New Zealand. There's 21 million black women, so 10,000 is not a lot. But do you know how much growth that New Zealand would experience? And then stories are going to get shared about New Zealand, the land of wonder and excitement, and of peace and tranquility. That's going to get back to the Americas. That's real competition. So allies can compete against each other for various things. It doesn't just have to be in military, in might. It could be in education. Suppose you have a case where the author of 1619, Nicole Hannah Jones, decides after teaching at Howard University that she wants to relocate to New Zealand. And she wants to live the rest of her life in New Zealand. Suppose that happens. That's big news, and that's just one highly elegant black woman in America. So this kind of thing really does become threatening to nations. I can see how and why. So nations have to compete in competition to really keep their citizenry happy, sustained, and enduring. They do. You gotta look at what America is presenting to black women. You can't even go to a grocery store in Buffalo as a grandmother and not get gunned down. That's what America is presenting to black women. You can't go to a gas station without getting punched 10 times by a racist. That's what America is presenting. So it's going to be easy for New Zealand to present a better picture. A scenic picture of the Indo-Pacific. Oh, they'll do foot massages and watermelon mojitos. They'll do back massages and sand under your toes at the beach. It'll be night and day. Night and day. You know, this nation has to compete. It has to compete in new and intriguing ways if it wants to maintain black women in this country. I think we all know this. Or we all should know this.